Hello, everybody. My name is Jim, and this is my reading wrap up for February 2023. So, I didn't do so great this month. I only completed 2 books, which is the same as January, but I was not able to start another book in the process. So, I feel like I'm dragging behind a little bit. A Game of Thrones is still kind of sitting at 25%, so I'm not really going to talk about that. I did crack another book open as well, but I'm not comfortable saying anything about it because I literally only read a few pages. But I did finish Soul of the Deep by Natasha Bowen, as I said I would. It is a direct continuation of Skin of the Sea, so pretty much anything that happened in this book I can't really say much about because otherwise it would spoil the first book, and I do want to encourage you guys to read this duology. Soul of the Deep was a great improvement on a writing style that honestly I already liked. I think that Natasha Bowen was able to rein in her purple prose a little bit without sacrificing her lyrical, poetic, fluid writing style that she has. I think that this story was very much her style, and she did a wonderful job. There was also a little bit of an issue with some parts in Skin of the Sea dragging a little bit, but Bowen was able to alternate between action and more intimate scenes so well in Soul of the Deep. And without spoiling too much, because as I said, this is a direct result of the events that happened in the first novel, I'll kind of base a little bit of a review off of the blurb. And please, if I mispronounce this word, correct me, because the only real pronunciations that I was able to find were AI generated, and I just don't trust that. So please correct me in the comments. Please, 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 I beg you, because I do want to give this book a proper review at some point. Maybe not, super soon, but I do want to talk about this book a little bit more in more depth and detail. So if I mispronounce anything, seriously, correct me, because I don't want to look like a fool when I review this book later. But as a result of the first novel, the Ajogun, again, please correct me, have been unbound. They've been released onto the world. And who the Ajogun are the embodiment of afflictions. They are manifestations of the things that attack humans internally from the inside, and now they are wreaking havoc on the world and need to be stopped. So a lot of what Simi and her ragtag crew need to do, they need to basically undo and fix some of the things that they caused as a result of the ending of Skin of the Sea. I won't go into too much more than that, but there are so many action sequences that I thought were extremely well done. There were also characters that were somewhat introduced in Skin of the Sea, but they didn't really have a role in the grand plot. They were just referenced or mentioned in passing by Simi or other characters that were much more incorporated in Soul of the Deep, and I really enjoyed that. We got to meet all of the Mamiwata super early on, so that's not really a spoiler at all. And one of them actually joins Simi on the journey. And what's really cool and what I really liked about this character in particular was that Simi was able to see her struggles being a fish out of water, literally, a Mamiwata walking on land, and witnessing her pain and witnessing her struggle having to transform between one and the other, and knowing that it probably feels weird to have people see her in her human form when she is so used to being under the water, kind of hidden away. These are all feelings that Simi felt in the first book, and she is now seeing it from an outside perspective. She is seeing a reflection of herself on someone else, and I think that's so cool. I love these more intimate relationships that Natasha Bowen is able to craft. Of course, there was one in the first book that I absolutely adored, and she has done it again. So if you really like close, intimate relationships that are meaningful and parties that aren't just formed for the sake of pushing a story forward, but are actually formed because of true love and respect for each other, then I absolutely recommend reading both of Bowen's novels. I gave Skin of the Sea 4 stars just because there were a few things that I thought could improve, but Natasha Bowen was able to hit Soul of the Deep out of the park. I have not rated it yet, but I do plan to give this 5 stars. The second book that I read, I said that I wouldn't read any memoirs this month, but I absolutely did once I found out that someone that I went to school with wrote As Familiar as Family. This is by Nikki Pappas. And I had many fears going into reading this memoir. First of all, reviewing it, I figured it would be tough to sell just because I know the author, so it just sounds like I'm being biased. But I do recommend this for people who need to understand how certain dangerous systems are created in environments that are advertised as safe and as welcoming, as hopeful, because a lot of these systems contradict that. And I don't want anybody to come into this memoir thinking that it's an attack on Christianity. That's really not the case. But as someone who left another church, not the same one that Nikki Pappas attended, that also carried some of these harmful ideologies, I do think that it's important to read this as it is a problem in this country specifically, and especially around the area that she and I grew up. This isn't just a memoir of a girl who was racist once and was magically cured. No, this was a fight to break free from a very toxic system, very toxic ideologies that made her hate herself and also justified certain actions that were committed against her that were just awful, that didn't need any form of justification. She felt that she was a problem, and this memoir is all about her struggles with that and her overcoming it. And honestly, I couldn't be any prouder of Nikki for writing this memoir. She's not a celebrity. She's not somebody that people know, but I do think that this sort of thing is extremely important for people to read because of the way these ideologies were cultivated and how they grew inside a place of worship that's supposed to be safe and isn't supposed to be as hateful and as tense and toxic and anxiety inducing as it was. And it does kind of make you think about certain churches and how they're run. Again, I came into this memoir with a lot of reservations. One, of course, was a fear that I myself would be in this memoir, which it turns out I am not. But she has had to overcome a lot, and there's a lot of trauma in her past that she's probably still working through today. But I am so happy that she wrote this and she put this out there, because I certainly felt seen and heard, even though my experience was similar but on the other side of the coin. And I just wish, honestly, that the people who really need to read this memoir would read it. I do especially encourage any white person to read this. I'm white. I read it. And I don't believe that we should leave all of the change up to the people that these harmful systems affect. I really think that this memoir comes from the angle of us being part of the change, being part of solving the issue while simultaneously lifting the voices of the people who need to be heard. As people who have that front row seat, we should be able to be like that little virus or that little bug to scatter throughout the system and break it before it becomes a problem. And I think memoirs like this are really helpful as guides to understand what to look out for and what to see. I really didn't want to get political with this, but I mean, it is what it is. That is what this memoir is. So if you think that it's interesting to you, then pick it up, read it with an open mind. and really look deep inside yourself to make sure that you are not passing any of this toxicity on to the people around you. It's a great read, and again, I just don't want to sound biased, but I did give this memoir a genuine 5 stars. I was cheering very often. I was fuming angry very often. I got teary-eyed, and I feel like any book, whether it's a memoir or something else, written by whoever that makes me feel that sort of roller coaster of emotions deserves the 5 stars. And her writing style is great. She's always been a very funny person, and she does like to throw in some humor here and there. So I do wish that there was a little bit more of it to break up some of the tension. There was one part in particular that I liked about her interaction with a retail employee sort of later in her memoir that I thought was funny. I wish that there were more things like that. But all in all, this really was a 5-star read, and I do encourage anybody to read this. I do think that you will take a lot away from it. And I genuinely hope that this memoir puts Nikki on the map, because I think that she deserves it. So yeah, I didn't want to get political in this, but those were my reads for this month. But otherwise, I've been Jim. You've been great and gracious. Happy reading.